Hey guys, Dr. Brown here from Kubo Math, coming to you from Tarlac City, Philippines. Hopefully everyone's had a good day. And now let's get on some Algebra 1, more on multiplication. So we're going to use the distributive rule to understand inverses. And we've had inverses earlier, but we're going to talk about those a little bit more and then dive into actually solving equations algebraically. So let's get after it. Okay. If you look at, let's say we have the variable m, and we want the inverse of that number, we can multiply it by a -1, and that becomes a -m. So we had m before, and now we have a -m. Now if you add those two together, you get 0. Okay, so let's look at each of these equations here, and let's multiply each one by a -1 and just see what happens. Now let's start with this guy here to be a little simpler. If I take a -1 times t, that equals -t. Not so hard. If I take a -1 times 3, I get a -3. But what happens when I multiply -1 times this? Now I need to distribute that negative inside. You'll recall the rule. If I have, I always talk about recalling the rule. It's important. If I have A times B plus C, the parentheses of B plus C, this A can be distributed to each one of those, and it becomes AB, so A times B, plus A times C, which is AC. So A times C, A times B. We're doing the exact same thing, finding the inverse of the 2A plus 3. So I have a -1. Sometimes you may just see that as a negative, which is implying there is a 1 there. We don't write it down sometimes. So -1 times 2a and a -1 times a +3. So -1 times 2a gives me -2a. And a -1 times a +3 gives me a -3. So the inverse of 2a plus 3 is -2a minus 3. Okay, let's try that on x plus 3. If I take that negative out here, what does that look like? I'm transposing that onto those two numbers. So that's -1 times x is a minus x. A -1 times a +3, so negative times positive is -3. So the inverse of x plus 3 is -x minus 3. So let's try this one. The inverse of x minus 2 is -x. So -1 times x is a -x. Negative times negative is +2. -1 times 2 is 2. So -x plus 2. Now this one, I have a -x plus 1. If I take the inverse of that, so negative times negative is +x. Negative times positive is -1. So the inverse of -x plus 1 is x minus 1. Clear as mud? Okay. So you're just distributing that value to each term internally and then working with whatever the signs are. As you know, negative times negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. Positive times negative is negative. Positive times positive is positive. If the signs are alike, it comes out positive. If the signs are different, It comes out negative. So, okay, and this would be in the algebraic rules video, so I would encourage you to look at that. Okay, so now then, let's solve some equations. Up until this point in Algebra 1, we've really just been working with inverses, multiplying positive and negative numbers, adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. But what about just solving algebraically an equation? So let's take the simple equation x plus 1 equals 0. Okay? Algebraically, we would say whatever we do to one side, as long as we do it to the other side, it's still equal. So I want to solve for x. So I need to get rid of the 1. So I have x plus 1. And if I subtract 1 from 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. That'll work. So actually, but I need to subtract 1 from the other side. So a positive 1 minus 1 or 1 minus 1, that comes to 0, which leaves me only x. And x equals 0 minus 1. Well, 0 minus 1 is a negative 1. As we said, that's minus a positive, which is the same as plus a negative. So I know on my number line, if I'm at 0, and I say I'm adding a negative 1, then the sign of the negative, so it's plus a negative 1, the sign of that number lets me know which direction to go on the number line, as long as I'm always adding. Okay, so negative 1, let's put that back in. Negative 1 plus 1, so I have a negative 1, and I add a positive 1 to it, I get 0, which is what I want. Okay? This is exciting already. Okay, y minus 4 equals 0. Well, I should write that down correctly. Y minus 4 equals 0. Well, now I have, if this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So I'm at a negative 4, and I need to get back to 0 because I need to get here. So that means I need to add 4 plus a positive 4. So if I said y minus 4 plus 4 plus a positive 4 equals 0 plus 4, so I've added 4 to both sides. A negative 4 plus a positive 4 wipes those two out. I'm left with y equals 0 plus 4 equals 4. So let's plug 4 back in and try it. 4 minus 4 equals 0. That's correct. Okay, man, we are rolling now. All right. One thing I should say about, excuse me, I've had a cold, but one thing about the number 0, it's a special number. If you think about positive times positive numbers, if you multiply those together, you can't get 0. You get a positive number, something greater than 0. A positive times negative or a negative times a positive, both of those give me a negative number, which is less than 0. A negative times a negative gives me a positive, so that's greater than 0 also. But I can only get 0 if I multiply the number by 0. 0 times something, something will give me 0. It doesn't matter what number you put in that box. If you multiply it by 0, it equals 0. I had a math teacher one time. He'd have all these big calculations going on, but something over here was 0, and someone would ask, what's all this equal? He would say, I don't know and I don't care, because that one is 0 and I know the answer is 0. He wouldn't waste his time figuring out all of that because this number was 0, it equals 0. So having said that, we can utilize that to solve equations, solve for the variable in an equation. So let's work one. Let's say we have x times x plus 2 equals 0. What does that mean? It means this can be 0 or that can be 0 because 0 times anything is the only way to get 0. Well, okay, in this case, that means x could equal 0. What's in this parentheses could equal 0, or x plus 2 could equal 0, which means x plus 2 minus 2 equals 0 minus 2. So my positive 2 and this 2 cancel. 2 minus 2 is 0. That leaves me x equals 0 minus 2, which is a negative 2. So if I put the negative 2 back in, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So my two solutions is x equals 0 or x equals negative 2. Hey, how cool is that? Yeah, okay. So 0 becomes a special number out there. Zeros may feel like they're just left out sometimes. You have positive infinity, wow, what a number. Negative infinity, wow, what a number. But there's those 0 carrying the load every day. 0 helps us. Let's look at another one. X times x minus 3 equals 0. Well, that means this can be 0 or what's in this parentheses can be 0, which, following along with what we just did, that means x equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. So now, though, I have a negative 3, so I'm below the number line. I need to add a positive 3 to that. So x minus 3 plus 3 equals 0 plus 3. I've added 3 to both sides. The negative 3 plus a positive 3, those 3's cancel. I'm left with x equals 0 plus 3, which is 3. Let's plug that back in. 3 minus 3 is in fact 0. 0 times anything. You know, in this case, if x is 3, so I have 3 minus 3, and this is 3. 3 times 0 is what? Hey, 0. There's Mr. 0 carrying the load again. Okay, I guess that's it for this video. Hopefully this helps you some. Hey, believe in 0. And now that we're beginning to solve a few equations, we'll start picking up speed. So I would encourage you to keep working, studying, go back to the algebraic rules, and soon we'll be into exponentials and logarithms. So it won't be long before this will get more exciting, let's say that. So have a great evening, and remember, together let's build a better tomorrow and do that through math. So have a great day and talk to you soon. Thanks.